Lena stood at the edge of the village square, her silk wedding dress now torn and muddied from the journey up the mountain path. The other villagers had long since stopped watching her leave, their whispers and judgments fading into the distance below. She clutched a small bundle of belongings against her chest and looked up at the man walking ahead of her, his broad shoulders carrying a worn pack, his steps sure and steady on the rocky trail. This was Chen, the mountain man everyone pitied, the poorest soul in all of Riverside Village, and as of 3 hours ago, her husband. The marriage had shocked everyone. Lena came from the wealthy Chang family, merchants who had made their fortune in tea and silk. Her father had arranged matches with magistrates' sons, with successful traders from the capital, with men who could offer her a life of comfort and prestige. But Lena had refused them all, much to her family's dismay. There was something in those arranged meetings that felt hollow, like looking at beautiful pottery with cracks running through it that everyone pretended not to see. The men spoke of her beauty and her family's wealth, but none asked about her love of painting, her dreams of seeing the world beyond their valley, or the poetry she wrote in secret by candlelight. Chen had come to the village 6 months ago, appearing one morning at the market with a cart of wild herbs, mountain mushrooms, and honey so pure it glowed golden in the sunlight. He was quiet, speaking only when necessary, his clothes patched and simple. He lived alone in a small hut somewhere high up the mountain, people said, surviving on what the forest provided. The village women clucked their tongues in pity. The men joked that he was probably hiding from debts or running from the law. Children made up stories that he was a hermit who talked to ghosts. But Lena had noticed something different. She had been in the market that first day, and she watched how gently Chen handled a bird with a broken wing that had fallen near his cart. She saw how he gave extra herbs to old widow May without asking for payment, how his eyes held a depth that reminded her of still mountain lakes. Over the weeks she found excuses to visit the market when he came down from the mountain. They began to talk, first about his herbs and her interest in their medicinal properties, then about the sunrise he witnessed each morning, the patterns of the clouds, the old legends of the mountains. Chen spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight and meaning. He asked her what made her happy, what she dreamed about, what she saw when she closed her eyes and imagined her life. When Chen had asked her father for her hand in marriage, the entire household had erupted in chaos. Her father had laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. Her mother had wept. Her brothers had threatened to throw Chen out physically. They called him a beggar, a nobody, a fool who dared to reach beyond his station. But Lena had stood firm. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen by another person. She chose Chen, chose a life she couldn't predict over a cage gilded with gold. Now, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Lena wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Her feet ached in her embroidered shoes, never meant for such rough terrain. Her family had disowned her, her mother's final words still echoing in her mind about throwing away her future for a fantasy. The mountain path grew steeper, narrower, and the civilized world she had known all her life felt very far away. Chen stopped and turned to her, his weathered face softened by concern. "We can rest if you need to," he said quietly. "The path is difficult, especially in those shoes." Lena looked down at her feet, then back at him. "How much further?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Before nightfall, we will reach my home," Chen replied. "I know this has been hard for you. I know what you gave up. I chose this," Lena said, lifting her chin. "I chose you." Something flickered in Chen's eyes, something that looked like pain and hope intertwined. "Yes," he said softly, "you did, and I promise you, Lena, that your choice will be honored. Rest now. I will prepare some tea." They sat on a large flat stone overlooking the valley below. Chen built a small fire with practiced efficiency and brewed tea from herbs he carried in his pack. The beverage was unlike anything Lena had tasted before, sweet and warming, with flavors that seemed to change with each sip. As she drank, she felt her exhaustion ease, her muscles relaxing. "This tea," she said, "it's extraordinary. I've never encountered anything like it in all my father's tea shops." Chen smiled, a rare expression that transformed his face. "It grows only at certain elevations, where the mist meets the stone. There are many things on this mountain that the valley has forgotten." As darkness fell, they continued upward. Chen lit a torch, and its light threw dancing shadows on the rock face beside them. The path became almost impossibly narrow, and Lena had to press herself against the mountain wall, Chen's steady hand guiding her. Just when she thought she could go no further, the path opened into a small clearing. In the moonlight, she could make out a simple hut, exactly as the villagers had described, small and humble, built of rough wood and stone. Chen helped her inside, lit a lantern, and Lena looked around at what was now her home. It was sparse but clean, with a sleeping mat, a small stove, shelves lined with jars and bundles of herbs, and a table with 2 rough chairs. Through the single window she could see nothing but darkness and the glitter of stars. "It is not what you are accustomed to," Chen said, his voice tight with something that might have been shame. Lena turned to face him. "Chen, I did not marry you for a house or possessions. I married you because you are the only person who has ever asked me what I wanted from life instead of telling me what I should want." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow, I will show you why I brought you here. Why I dared to ask for your hand, despite having nothing to offer by the world's measure. Tonight, please rest. The journey has been long. Lena lay on the sleeping mat, Chen having insisted she take it while he made a bed of blankets on the floor. Despite her exhaustion, sleep evaded her through the window. She watched the stars wheel slowly across the sky, so much brighter and more numerous than they ever appeared in the valley. She thought of her mother's silk sheets, her cushioned bed, the servants who had attended to her every need. She thought of the life she had left behind and the vast unknown that stretched before her. And surprisingly, she felt no regret, only a strange anticipation, as if standing on the edge of a mystery that was finally about to reveal itself. When she woke, the hut was filled with the grey light of early dawn. Chen was already up, preparing a simple breakfast of rice, porridge, and preserved vegetables. They ate in companionable silence, and then Chen said, "Come, I have something to show you. Bring only what you can carry easily. We have some climbing ahead." Lena changed from her ruined wedding dress into simple clothes Chen had laid out for her, clothes that must have belonged to someone else long ago, she thought, for they fit her reasonably well. They left the hut and began to climb again, even higher up the mountain. The path here was barely visible, overgrown and treacherous, clearly not used by anyone but Chen. The air grew thinner and colder. Mist began to gather around them, thick and disorienting. "Stay close," Chen instructed. "The fog can confuse even those who know these paths well." They climbed for what felt like hours. Lena's legs trembled with effort, her breath came in gasps. Just as she thought she would have to beg him to stop, Chen halted. They stood on a narrow ledge, surrounded by thick white mist on all sides. Below them, above them, around them, there was nothing visible but swirling white. "Chen, where are we?" Lena asked, her voice swallowed by the fog. He turned to her and took both her hands in his. "Lena, before we go further, I must tell you the truth. I must tell you who I really am and why I came to your village. You have given up everything based on trust, but you deserve to know what you have married into." Lena's heart pounded. "Tell me," Chen's grip tightened on her hands. "I am not from the world below. I am from a place that exists between the earth and sky, a kingdom that was lost to time and memory. It is called Yunhai, the Sea of Clouds, and it has existed on this mountain for 1,000 years, hidden from those below by ancient agreements and protective mists. I am the son of the kingdom's guardian, and I was sent below 6 months ago on a quest that my family believed would be my final test." Lena stared at him, trying to process his words. A kingdom in the clouds. It sounded like the fairy tales her grandmother used to tell. "I don't understand. If you're from some hidden kingdom, why were you living as a poor mountain man? Why did you come to our village?" "Our kingdom has been fading," Chen said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "For generations we have lived isolated, protected, but also stagnant. Our numbers have dwindled. Our joy has dimmed." The elders consulted the ancient texts and found a prophecy spoke of a time when the kingdom would face a choice: remain hidden and slowly fade into nothing, or find a bridge between the old world and the new. That bridge, the prophecy said, would be a person from below who would choose love over comfort, truth over appearance, the unknown over the familiar. My quest was to go below and see if such a person existed. Lena felt dizzy, though whether from the thin air or from Chen's revelation, she couldn't tell. "And you think I am this person from the prophecy?" "I know you are," Chen said gently. "From the moment I saw you in the market, helping that young boy who had dropped his mother's vegetables, gathering them up even though you wore fine clothes, speaking to him with such kindness. I watched you for weeks, Lena. I saw your heart. I saw how you questioned the world around you, how you wanted more than what was offered. I fell in love with you, and that was not part of the plan. I was supposed to remain detached, to simply observe and report, but I could not. When I asked for your hand, I was defying my own family's instructions. I had no right to drag you into this, but I could not bear the thought of leaving you to a life that would slowly crush your spirit." Tears formed in Lena's eyes, but she didn't look away from him. "So everything between us, it was all because of this prophecy?" "No," Chen said fiercely. "The prophecy is why I went to your village. But everything between us, every conversation, every moment, that was real. That was us. I love you, Lena, not because of what you might mean to my kingdom, but because of who you are. And now I have brought you here, and you must make another choice. I can take you back down. I can give you gold and silver from my family's treasury, enough that you could start a new life anywhere you wish, far from the village that judged you. Or you can come forward with me, through the mist, and see the kingdom of Yunhai. But I warn you, if you enter, your life will change in ways I cannot fully predict. The prophecy speaks of a bridge, but it does not say what must be crossed or what must be paid." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the cold mist on her face, the solid warmth of Chen's hands holding hers. A kingdom in the clouds, a prophecy. It all sounded impossible. But then again, 2 days ago, it would have seemed impossible that she would marry the poorest man in the village and climb to the roof of the world. She had already crossed one impossible threshold. What was one more? She opened her eyes and looked at Chen, this man who had seen her truly, who had loved her not for her family's wealth or her conventional beauty, but for the restless, questioning spirit inside her that she had always been told to suppress. "Take me forward," she said. "Show me your kingdom." Relief and fear warred in Chen's expression, but he nodded. He turned and began walking directly into the thickest part of the mist, Lena following close behind. The white fog grew so dense she could barely see Chen's back in front of her. She felt a strange sensation, like walking through water, a resistance that pressed against her skin. Then, suddenly, the mist parted like a curtain being drawn back, and Lena stopped, her breath catching in her throat. Before her stretched a sight that defied belief. They stood at the entrance to a vast plateau, wreathed in clouds that moved and flowed like a living sea. Rising from this sea of clouds were structures of incredible beauty, buildings of white stone and dark wood, their roofs curved and decorated with intricate carvings. Gardens floated on what seemed to be islands of earth suspended in the mist, connected by graceful bridges. Waterfalls poured from invisible heights, their water turning to mist before reaching the ground, creating rainbows in the morning light. People moved through this ethereal landscape, dressed in clothes of flowing silk in colors Lena had never seen before, hues that seemed to shift and change like the clouds themselves. "Welcome to Yunhai," Chen said softly. "Welcome to my home." As they walked forward, people began to notice them. They stopped in their tasks, conversations halting mid-sentence. A murmur ran through the crowd like wind through bamboo. Lena felt their eyes on her, saw curiosity and hope and fear in their expressions. Chen led her through winding paths, past buildings that seemed to have grown from the mountain itself rather than being built upon it. They came to a large structure at the center of the kingdom, grander than the others, with wide steps leading to an entrance flanked by stone dragons. Inside, the hall was filled with soft light that seemed to come from the very walls. At the far end sat 3 figures on raised seats. As Chen and Lena approached, she could see they were elderly, 2 men and 1 woman, their hair white as the clouds outside, their faces marked with the dignity of age and wisdom. Chen bowed deeply, and Lena followed his lead. "Honored elders, honored father, honored mother, I have returned," Chen said formally. "I bring with me Lena of Riverside Village, who has chosen to leave her world and enter ours. She is the one the prophecy spoke of." The woman in the center, whom Lena realized must be Chun's mother, studied her with eyes that seemed to look straight through to her soul. When she spoke, her voice was melodious but firm. "Welcome, child. You have made a brave choice. Though I wonder if you understand what that choice entails." "I admit I do not fully understand," Lena said, finding her voice. "But I chose to trust Chen. And I chose to believe that there is more to this world than what I have been taught. If I am meant to be some kind of bridge, I am willing to try, though I do not know how." The 3 elders exchanged glances. One of the men, Chan's father, spoke. "The prophecy states that the bridge must unite 2 worlds that have grown apart. Our kingdom has hidden itself for 1,000 years, protecting our ways, our knowledge, our power. But in that protection, we have also imprisoned ourselves. We have forgotten how to grow, how to change, how to embrace the new. The world below has forgotten us, has forgotten the old wisdom, the connection to nature and balance that we maintain. Both worlds are diminished by this separation." The other man, clearly the chief elder, continued. "A bridge must connect to shores, but to do so, it must be strong enough to bear the weight of both. Lena of Riverside Village, are you strong enough? Are you willing to stand between 2 worlds, to bring each to the other, even when it is difficult, even when both sides resist?" Lena thought of her mother's tears, her father's anger. She thought of the villagers' judgment and scorn. She thought of the fear in Chun's eyes when he told her the truth. "I have already stood against my own world for what I believed was right," she said. "If I must stand between 2 worlds, I will do it. But I cannot do it alone. Nor should you have to," Chun's mother said, a slight smile touching her lips. "Chun has also made his choice, defying our instructions to remain detached, choosing love over duty. Perhaps that is part of the prophecy we did not see. Perhaps the bridge requires 2 pillars, 1 from each world, joined together." The chief elder rose from his seat. "Very well, Lena of Riverside Village, we accept you into the kingdom of Yunhai, but the prophecy must be fulfilled, and we do not yet know what that requires. You must discover your purpose here, discover what it means to be a bridge. Until then, you are a guest and a student, learning our ways even as, perhaps, you teach us about the world below." Over the following weeks, Lena began to understand the incredible nature of the kingdom she had entered. Yunhai was not just a place of beauty, it was a repository of knowledge that the outside world had lost. The people of the Cloud Kingdom were masters of herbalism, healing arts that could cure diseases thought incurable below. They understood the patterns of weather and seasons with a precision that allowed them to predict droughts and floods months in advance. They had developed ways to grow food in the thinnest soil, to purify water from mist, to build structures that swayed with earthquakes instead of collapsing. They studied the stars and could navigate by them even in daylight. They created art that captured not just the appearance of things but their essential spirit. But Lena also saw the kingdom's weaknesses. The population was indeed small, perhaps only a few hundred people. Most of them were elderly or middle-aged. There were very few children. The younger generation seemed listless, going through the motions of their training without passion. The kingdom felt like a museum, beautiful and precious, but static, slowly dying behind its protective mist. Chen showed her everything, introducing her to healers and scholars, artists and farmers. She learned that his family were the hereditary guardians of the kingdom. protectors who maintained the barriers in the ancient agreements. She learned that Yunhai had once been part of a network of similar hidden kingdoms. But one by one, over the centuries, the others had faded or been discovered and destroyed. Yunhai was the last. Lena spent her mornings learning from the master herbalist, a woman named Feng, who had knowledge of plants and their properties that would revolutionize medicine in the valley below. She spent her afternoons with the chronicle keeper, reading the ancient histories, understanding the mistakes that had led to Yunhai's isolation. In the evenings, she and Chen would walk through the floating gardens, talking about what they had learned, trying to puzzle out what the prophecy meant, what a bridge between worlds would actually look like. One night, as they sat on the edge of a cloud-wreathed precipice, Lena said, "I think I am beginning to understand. Your people have incredible knowledge, skills, wisdom that could help so many people in the world below. Medicine that could save lives, agricultural techniques that could prevent famines, warning systems for natural disasters. But you keep it all hidden here, and it slowly fades because there are not enough people to carry it forward, not enough fresh perspectives to make it grow." Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, but the reason we remain hidden is not simply fear. It is also protection. When the other kingdoms revealed themselves or were discovered, what happened? Armies came. Greedy rulers tried to conquer them to steal their knowledge and use it for war. Our ancestors decided it was better to hide than to see our wisdom corrupted. But hiding has its own cost," Lena said. "Your kingdom is dying a slow death, and the world below is suffering for lack of the knowledge you keep. A bridge is not meant to be one-directional. What if the bridge allows both worlds to support each other? Your people share their knowledge, but in a controlled, careful way, only with those who will use it for good. And in return, the world below brings new people, new energy, new perspectives. Your younger generation needs a purpose, needs to feel that their knowledge matters beyond these walls of mist." "How would we do this without being overwhelmed, without being conquered?" Chen asked, though his eyes showed he was considering the possibility. Lena was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "We start small. We start with my village. I return, but not as the disgraced daughter who married poorly. I return with medicine that cures old widow May's arthritis. I return with knowledge that helps Farmer Joe's failing crops. I return with weather predictions that save lives. And I tell them it comes from Chen, the mountain man they scorned. I tell them he is a keeper of old knowledge, a bridge to forgotten wisdom. We prove the value of what you have, but we do it slowly, carefully, building trust." Chen took her hand. "Chu would do this. You would go back to the place that rejected you, for the sake of both our worlds. I would do it for the children I see here with no future, and for the children below who die of preventable diseases," Lena said. "I would do it because I have seen both worlds now, and I love them both, and I cannot bear to see either of them suffer needlessly. Is that not what a bridge does? It bears the weight so that others can cross safely." Chen pulled her close. "I knew you were extraordinary from the moment I first saw you. I did not know you were this brave." The next morning, Lena brought her proposal to the elders. She expected resistance, argument, fear. Instead, Chun's mother smiled. "We hoped you would see this path," she said. "The prophecy spoke of a bridge, but we had been imagining it wrong. We thought it meant one great revelation, one moment when the walls would come down. We did not consider that a bridge is built slowly, stone by stone, connection by connection. There will be risks," the chief elder warned. "If word spreads too quickly, if the wrong people learn of Yunhai's existence, we could still face armies, conquest, destruction. Then we will be vigilant," Lena said. "We will choose carefully who receives what knowledge. We will build a network of trust, people in the world below who understand the value of what you protect and will help protect it in turn. It will take years, perhaps generations, but isn't that better than fading away?" Over the following months, the plan took shape. Lena would indeed return to Riverside Village, but not alone. She would be accompanied by 3 young people from Yunhai who were willing to live in the world below, to share their knowledge carefully while learning about the changing world. They would establish what they called a mountain sanctuary, a place where people could come to learn, ostensibly from Chen and his family of reclusive mountain scholars. The most advanced knowledge would be shared only with those who proved themselves trustworthy, who signed agreements to use what they learned for healing and helping, never for harm or profit at others' expense. On the day Lena was to descend the mountain, the entire kingdom gathered to see her off. Chen's mother approached her, carrying a small jade pendant on a silk cord. "This has been in our family for generations," she said, fastening it around Lena's neck. "It is a symbol of Yunhai, but more than that, it is a symbol of trust. You carry our hopes with you, daughter." The word daughter brought tears to Lena's eyes. Her own mother had disowned her, but here in this impossible kingdom in the clouds, she had found a new family, one that saw her not as a possession or a disappointment, but as a beacon of hope. Chen would accompany her down the mountain, along with the 3 young scholars. Together, they descended through the mist, leaving behind the ethereal beauty of Yunhai. As they approached Riverside Village, Lena's heart pounded. What if no one would listen? What if they were driven away again, but they had planned carefully? Their first visit was to old widow May, who had been kind to Chen during his time in the village. Lena brought her a salve made from herbs of Yunhai, along with instructions for gentle exercises. Within days, Widow May was moving with less pain than she had felt in years. She told her neighbors. Then they visited Farmer Joe, whose crops had been failing. Chen showed him a technique for enriching the soil and managing water that had been perfected over centuries in Yunhai's floating gardens. The next season, Joe's harvest was the best in the village. Word spread, but carefully, slowly. People began to see Chen not as the poor mountain man but as a keeper of valuable knowledge. They began to see Lina not as the foolish girl who had thrown away her future, but as someone who had found something precious. The mountain sanctuary was established, a halfway point between the village and Yunhai's hidden realm. Selected students were invited to study there, learning healing arts, agricultural techniques, weather prediction. Years passed. The trickle of knowledge from Yunhai began to transform Riverside Village. Disease became less common. Harvests became more reliable. When a great flood threatened, warnings from the mountain sanctuary allowed people to evacuate in time, saving hundreds of lives. Other villages heard of Riverside's good fortune and sought similar knowledge. The network grew, always carefully, always with agreements about the ethical use of what was learned. But the transformation was not one way. Young people from Yunhai living part-time in the world below brought back stories, ideas, perspectives that energized the Cloud Kingdom. New students came to Yunhai carefully selected, sworn to secrecy about its exact location but allowed to study its deepest mysteries. The population began to grow. Children's laughter, absent for so long, rang through the cloud-wreathed streets again. Lina became the living bridge she had promised to be, spending half her time in each world, translating not just knowledge but culture, helping each side understand the other. It was exhausting work. There was failures and setbacks. There were those in Yunhai who still feared exposure, and those below who wanted to conquer and exploit what they could not understand. But for every step backward, they took 2 steps forward. 5 years after Lina first climbed the mountain as a disgraced bride, she stood once again in the great hall of Yunhai, but this time the scene was very different. The hall was filled with people, some from the Cloud Kingdom and some from the world below, gathered for a celebration. The elders had called a great assembly to mark the success of what they now called the Bridge Initiative. The chief elder, now grown even more frail but with eyes still bright with intelligence, spoke. 5 years ago, we stood at the edge of extinction, afraid to change, afraid to trust. One young woman made a choice that seemed foolish to many, to marry a poor mountain man and leave behind everything she knew. But that choice saved us all. Lina showed us that bridges are not built by grand gestures, but by daily acts of courage, by standing firm between 2 worlds even when both push back. She has fulfilled the prophecy, not through magic or power, but through persistence, wisdom, and above all, love. Lina felt Chen's hand in hers and looked up at him. He smiled down at her, and she saw in his eyes the same depth that had first captured her attention in the village market so long ago. But now she understood what that depth was. It was the weight of responsibility, the burden of carrying an entire world's hopes, and the strength to bear it anyway. I could not have done it alone, Lina said when called upon to speak. Every bridge needs strong foundations. Chen has been my strength in the world below, just as I have tried to be a voice for that world here in you. But more than that, every person here who was brave enough to try something new, to trust in a different way, to believe that isolation and connection could both exist and balance. You are all part of this bridge. We have not built a structure of stone but a living network of trust and knowledge. And it will only be as strong as we continue to make it, generation after generation. The celebration continued late into the night. But Lina slipped away to one of the floating gardens, needing a moment of quiet. She stood at the edge, looking out over the sea of clouds, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. She had been so young that day in the village square, so naive about what she was choosing. If she had known then what she knew now, the challenges, the setbacks, the constant balancing act, would she still have made the same choice? You are thinking too hard, Chen said, appearing beside her. I can always tell when you are. Lina laughed. I was wondering if I would make the same choice again. Knowing what I know now. Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, and would you? In a heartbeat, Lina replied. Every hardship, every challenge, it all led to this, to a kingdom that is thriving again. 2 villages below where fewer children die, where fewer people go hungry. To a future where 2 worlds support each other instead of remaining ignorant of one another. How could I regret being part of that? You gave up a great deal, Chen reminded her gently. I gave up a life that was never really mine, Lina corrected, and I gained a life beyond anything I could have imagined. I gained you, I gained purpose. I gained 2 worlds instead of one small corner of one world. Chen pulled her close, and they stood together in the garden suspended between earth and sky, 2 people who had become a bridge between worlds. In the distance, Lina could hear music from the celebration, laughter mixing with the sound of water falling through mist. The stars above were beginning to appear, and the clouds below glowed with the last light of sunset. Years later, when Lina was old and her hair had turned the color of the clouds she loved, young people would ask her to tell the story of how the Bridge Initiative began. She would smile and say that it started with a simple choice to believe in something more than what was visible. She would tell them that the poorest man in the village had been the richest all along, wealthy in knowledge and purpose and love. She would explain that sometimes what looks like foolishness to others is actually the greatest wisdom, and that true courage is not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. But most importantly, she would tell them that every person has the power to be a bridge, to connect divided worlds, to stand firm in the space between and bear the weight so that others can cross safely. All it takes is the willingness to look beyond the surface, to trust in what the heart knows even when the mind doubts, and to believe that kindness and sacrifice and love are not weaknesses but the very foundations upon which all lasting change is built. And in the kingdom of Yunhai, high above the world and yet connected to it by threads of knowledge and trust, children who would never have been born continued to grow and learn and dream, living proof that sometimes the most impossible journeys lead to the most necessary destinations, and that a single act of faith can echo through generations, turning clouds into kingdoms and strangers into family, transforming both the world above and the world below into something far greater than either could have been alone.